next session is once again a radiograph session. We have been given a radiograph and asked to describe the fracture, the classification of it, and which is the specific X-ray view for evaluating these injuries, and what is the most common complication.
Yeah. So I think when we're dealing with the trauma stations, most of the times you would be shown an X-ray, and you would be talking about the fracture and describing it. So if you look over here, this is a lateral view of the ankle showing the tibia, fibula, calcaneum, and talus. But if you look at the talus over here, I mean the proximal portion of talus, which articulates with the tibiotalar or the subtalar joint, is missing. You can probably see a bit of shadow around this area. Unfortunately, we don't have an anteroposterior view, so you might have to see where exactly the fracture is, and that would help us better in identifying the type of the injury. But yes, as you can see, the whole of the head is visible and the fracture is somewhere around at the neck. So this is a talus neck fracture, and it involves dislocation along with dislocation at both the subtalar as well as the tibiotalar joint. So talking about classification, I think when I'm describing the fracture, I've already enumerated the facts that we need to know while describing the classification of this fracture. The classification that we use is a Hawkins Hawkins classification, which is divided into type 1 to type 4. And as the type increases, the severity of the injury increases as well. With type 1 being an undisplaced fracture with no dislocation, type 2 with a subtalar joint dislocation, 3 with an associated tibiotalar dislocation, and type 4, which is the most severe of all, will have an associated talonavicular joint dislocation as well. When we talk about specific X-ray view, the X-ray that we do for evaluating talar neck fractures or evaluating any pathology in talar neck is a Canali and Kelly view, in which I think is probably not needed to know more in details, but this is done with the ankle in plantar flexion and 15 degrees of pronation and an angle of 75 degrees from the vertical. What is the most common complication after the Hawkins type 3 talar neck fracture? Well, the chances of avascular necrosis is very high, and avascular necrosis would be the most common complication. So if we look at the answer key, so I think this is a talar neck fracture with subtalar and ankle joint dislocation, Hawkins type 3. The X-ray view is Canali and Kelly view. And the incidence of avascular necrosis with these fractures would be 20 to 100%. So this is the classification that I was talking about, the Hawkins classification, and it has given a description and the risk of AVN as well. So if you look at the Hawkins type 4, highest risk of AVN, which ranges from 70 to 100%.
Yep. Yeah. This is the next station. We have been shown a radiograph, and the history given is a 65-year-old lady with history of missing a step. This is followed by pain and swelling at the back of the ankle. So what is the fracture? What is the mechanism of action of this injury? What is the most common complication, and how do we fix it?
Okay, so there are a few things which are written. So first of all, it's a 65-year-old lady. So that means the patient is a geriatric female. History of missing a step, which again means that it is probably some form of low energy trauma. So it's not a high energy injury as we have seen in the previous slides. The problem is pain and swelling at the back of the ankle. Well, there is no description of anything else, so we are assuming that there is no wound at the back of the ankle. If you look at this X-ray, you can easily see that there is a piece of bone which is avulsed off from the posterior aspect of the calcaneum. So this is a calcaneal avulsion fracture. And when it is avulsed off, well, we all know what attaches over this area. So we can see this is the shadow of the tendo Achilles. So this is also called a tendo-Achilles avulsion type of fracture. What is the mechanism of action? So if you look at it, this is not really a high energy trauma. So definitely it is something when the bones have become quite weakened up and the fracture happens due to just a pull of the strongest tendon of body, which is the tendo-Achilles. So the mechanism of action would be a strong pull by a tendo-Achilles, which might have happened when the patient missed a step. The most common complication, I think most of these fractures are actually surgical emergencies because when we see these fractures, specifically this area can impinge on the skin at the back. And this is relatively a hypovascular zone with not a great blood supply. So the chances of it becoming open or chances of it having some soft tissue complications is quite high. So complications, whether surgically or if it is managed without surgery, the skin-related issue, infection would be one of the most common complications. And now, how will you fix it? So I think, well, in this case, yes, the most common modality of fixing these fractures have been by putting a screw through the fracture site and going into the calcaneum. But yes, I think in this, I would just go a bit further in just trying to educate you that apart from that, there are other ways of dealing with these fractures, which includes, because this is some kind of avulsion injury, and the risk of it getting avulsed after a screw fixation is quite high because the quality of the bone is not great. So treat it like an avulsion fracture and fix it with sutures. So from some form of suture, which can be either transosseous or in the form of suture anchors, can be used. And there have been some studies which talk about the biomechanical stability, and it has been shown that a combination of screw and suture anchor for this fracture is biomechanically the most stable configuration. So talking about the key, this is a calcaneal tuberosity avulsion fracture. Well, we can also include an extra articular type of calcaneum fracture in this case. The mechanism is sudden pull of gastrosoleus when the heel is put flat on the ground. The complication is skin necrosis and infection, and the surgical fixation of choice would be either with cannulated screws, a suture anchor, or a combination of both.
The next station, we are shown a radiograph in an AP view. There's a history given that it's a 23-year-old gentleman with a history of fall of a speeding bike, and this led to a deformed foot, and this is the radiograph. So we are asked to diagnose, know the foot deformity, inform about the management, as well as what are the structures which block the reduction.
Okay, so I think, well, this is a bit of a tricky station, and this would probably distinguish the top 10% from the remaining. Because if you look at this X-ray, well, I think many of us would assume that this X-ray looks quite normal, and there is no X-ray of the foot given, so that actually makes it a bit more complicated. So we know this is a young boy or young gentleman with a high velocity injury to the foot. The patient had a deformed foot after this, and there is an X-ray AP of the ankle given. So if you look at the structures that we normally see on the AP X-ray of the ankle, we look at the fibula, which is quite normal. We look at the tibia, and the medial malleus looks quite normal. We look at the syndesmosis. So there is a good tibiofibular overlap and a reasonably well-maintained tibial clear space. And if we look at the talus and the talar dome, everything looks normal. But when we go down, I think this is something that we don't really look in an ankle X-ray. But if you look down, well, you would have another bone below it, which is the calcaneum. And if you look at the plantar articular facet of the talus, well, there is nothing articulating with it. So that means probably there is something happening below. So in this case, this is a case of subtalar joint dislocation. And as we can see that the calcanea might have dislocated medially. So this is a medial subtalar joint dislocation. So what is the foot deformity in these cases? Well, these patients go into a form of a varus deformity along with a bit of adduction at the forefoot. So it looks like an acquired clubfoot form of deformity. The management in these cases, I mean, wherever there's a dislocation, you obviously reduce it. So in these cases also, the urgent management would be an, a closed reduction under or without an anesthesia as soon as the patient reaches you. What would be the subsequent management after that? That obviously depends upon the x-rays after that. If it is a pure dislocation with no fracture and the reduction is stable, you can just manage it with the plaster. But if you have fractures, you treat it accordingly. And if the dislocation does not reduce, then you do an open reduction. So another interesting part is what are the structures blocking the reduction? So when the joint is dislocated medially, most of the time the structure on the lateral side would be preventing it from reduction. And over here, the most common structure that blocks the reduction is an extensor digitorum brevis muscle. But nevertheless, sometimes the peroneal tendons can also get impinged over here. So let us look at the answer key now. So this is a medial subtalar dislocation. The foot is locked in supination, so which is an acquired clubfoot deformity. The treatment at this point of time would be an immediate closed reduction and a plaster immobilization. However, if the closed reduction is unsuccessful, you would proceed with an open reduction. The structures hindering the reduction of this dislocation, the most important is extensor digitorum brevis, but there is peroneal tendons and talonavicular joint capsule as well.